All right, welcome everyone. We'll get started in about 3 minutes. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Carly. Good to see you.
Morning, Josh. Great to see you. Morning, everyone. While we're waiting, if you don't mind, just put in where you're from, where you're joining from in the chat. It's always fun to see where we have folks joining from. Amazing. Washington, Pennsylvania, Seattle, Oakland. Hi, Tammy. Good to see you. Portland, Canada. Amazing. Boston, Scotland. Hi, Colleen. Welcome from Scotland. James, good to see you again in the UK. Amazing. A lot of people in Oakland, the Bay Area. Good to see you. Ahmad in Egypt. Amazing. Welcome. Sila's in South Africa, in Johannesburg, Toronto, in Indonesia. Amazing. We have people from all over. Welcome, welcome. Awesome. We also have people from Madrid, Saudi Arabia, Paris, Tunisia, tuning in via YouTube. Thank you so much for being here. It's amazing to think we're all joining into the same Zoom room from every corner of the world. All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome. Welcome. My name is Carly. If I haven't met you already, I am the Events and Community Partnerships Lead here at Learnit, and it's always a pleasure to be here with you. We are here every Friday for these weekly community events, and thrilled to be bringing you a session on visualizing data with Power BI. Our theme this week, or this month rather, for February is data visualization. If you are new to Learnit, welcome. We're so happy to have you. If you have been following along with our events for the past month, over the course of the year, really thank you so much for being here, and thank you for being a part of our community. For those of you that are new, I'll just give a quick overview of Learnit and kind of why we do these sessions. We host these weekly community events as a part of our community series. With the pandemic and this continued kind of work from home and remote environment, we saw a really big uprising in demand for more access to our training, so making free resources more available to our community. And we also saw a demand from our clients just to have more touch points on employee resources. So we really wanted to increase the amount of short, accessible trainings we made to our clients and also to all of you all over the world. So whether you're working with teams, whether you're working on building your own business, whether you're transitioning maybe jobs and you're looking to really upskill, Learnit, we're really here to help you learn the skills for the economy of today and the economy of tomorrow. So we're thrilled to be able to help you do that through these weekly sessions. We invite you to join us every week. And this month, again, is data visualization. So we'll be focusing events on how to use the actual technology like Power BI and Excel and Tableau, and then how you actually translate that into telling the story and presenting. So we'll share a little bit more on how you can access future events and recordings of sessions after this session with Josh. So stay around. At the end of the session, we'll be talking about Offsite, our community platform. But without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to Josh Warvis, who is our instructor for today. Josh is a California native and is currently in New York. He just relocated with his beautiful wife to New York. Josh has been on the Learnit team for several years and is an expert web developer and a Learnit instructor. And he's worked with companies really all over the world, Fortune 500 companies, on data analysis training programs and Office 365 migration projects. So he works directly with a lot of our clients, our largest clients. So we're really in good hands this morning when it comes to talking about visualizing data and data analysis with Power BI. So with that, thank you so much, Josh. I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Carly. It's good to see you all. I see a bunch of you that I recognize in the chat. It's really cool what Carly has done to build up the community, and it's good to see all of you. I've got a few private chats now of people who I recognize. Hi, everybody. It's good to see you all again. If you haven't met me before, my name is Josh. I've been here at Learnit for on and off for almost 17 years. Actually, this summer will be 17 years. So it's a great place to work. And Carly's really done great work with us to help us all connect more. And yeah, I love doing these 1 hour sessions. Thank you all for taking time out of your morning to join me. This, of course, is me and my better half walking down the aisle here. So let's talk about what we're going to do today. We're going to cover the very basics of importing data and then getting something out of it. And that's really what I'm here to show you. We actually have a couple day class just about the program that I'm going to offer a quick little glimpse into over the next 45 minutes. But keep in mind, to say that I'm going to scratch the surface is not doing it any justice. It's barely even letting you see what the power of Power BI can do. But of course, we'll talk about what that means and how it fits into your life here in just a little while. But a couple of the things that I'm going to cover during this class is connecting to your data. So you've got a spreadsheet, right? You've got a CSV file, or you have some data somewhere, and you want to glean some insights from it. And Power BI is a way to do that. It's not the only way, and I'm glad Carly mentioned there are other ways of doing this. Actually, even inside of Microsoft Office, there are things like pivot charts. And if you haven't seen, oh, hey, how's it going? Oh, cool. That's good to see you again. So there are other ways of gleaning information about your data. You can use Power BI. Of course, that's why you're all here. You can use pivot charts. Carly mentioned Tableau is another way of doing it. So this is not your only option, but my argument to you today is it's a good one. It's the best one for, especially if you're already in Microsoft Office and you've already been using, the import features in Excel, and you already have spreadsheets, and it's a very easy transition for most of us. So we'll talk about connecting to stuff inside of Excel and then transforming that data. It's not always perfect, right? You're going to get a set of data that's not always perfect. You need to manipulate it, and you don't want to have to do this every single time. So I'll show you how to use the Power Query plugin to manipulate your data and get it ready for analysis. And of course, that's one of those repetitive tasks that I'll show you how to redo and make it much easier to not have to every time perform those steps. Then we'll actually get into creating a visualization. We don't call them charts. I'll try to, like I said in the last one, I did it last year. We don't call them charts anymore because visualizations are so much more encompassing. You can make a visualization that is on a map, for instance, or a visualization that is on a bar chart or a pie chart, or on a scatter plot, right? So they're not really charts. We call them visualizations because it's much more encompassing. Along with that, we'll talk about using shelves, and then we'll combine multiple visualizations into a dashboard. Again, I'm here just to tickle that little bug that's going to make you want to learn more. There's so much more to learn here, and I'm going to go through it very, very quickly, and even perhaps prohibitively so. If you'd like to follow along, you can if you'd like to. If you already have Power BI installed, I will send you, I'm about to plop some data into your chat window. If you want to download this file, actually, I encourage you to do it either way, because once this meeting ends, of course, the chat window will be closed. Download this file. If you want to follow along, I would love for you to do so, and play along with me. If you would rather just watch, please download the file that I just sent to you ahead of time so that if you want to play with it afterwards, you can. I will first start off by opening up Power BI desktop. Now, if you have Power BI installed, you can do a search for Power BI down here in your start menu and open up Power BI desktop. And I'm also going to open up Zoom here because our Zoom.
Josh, not to interrupt you, but I also want to say Marissa and I, our coordinator, will capture questions during and throughout the session. So Josh, feel free to pause us if you want questions, but we'll also take them at the end and we'll take note of them after.
That's perfect. Yeah, actually, we just got one. If you felt like it, you could put that file, Carly, up on OneDrive, and that way they can download it from a link as well. I didn't bother to do that. I just put it inside of the chat. But anyways, there's one chat. But yes, I'll make sure that I pause a couple of times. Please put your questions into the chat window. We're all here to help. And of course, they are monitoring as well, but I'll answer any questions that are amenable over the audio as well. So thanks, Carly. Cool. So I am sharing my screen. Hopefully y'all can see my screen here. When you first open up Power BI, you'll see a window that looks like this. Now, I've taught this class a couple of times. So there's some recent stuff over here on the left. If you haven't ever opened up Power BI before, you'll see nothing here, but you can see your recent reports here. I do suggest looking at these videos. They're a great way to sort of get your feet wet. And of course, that's why I'm here as well. But it's a great way to kind of get.
So we can't see your screen.
I see. Let me try to stop sharing and then reshare. Let me know. Thank you for telling me that.
I do. Now I do.
Okay, cool. Thank you for letting me know. I just had to stop sharing it and reshare. So I appreciate you very much. Cool. So yeah, so here's the first intro screen that you'll see when you first get into Power BI. And there's some videos here that I do suggest watching if you are just trying to get your feet wet. Of course, that's why I'm here, to help that kind of process happen for you. But try those out when you have a second. Look at those; they're definitely worth watching. So first off, let's go up to 35,000 feet and look down at what we're about to cover for the next 40 minutes or so. I need to take some set of data and distill it down into something meaningful. And to do that, we have to have external sources of data that we bring into Power BI. And I'm going to show you that. This is what I just put into the chat window a moment ago. It's an Excel file. And I want you to just look at this Excel file with me for a moment so you can see what we're about to analyze here. There is this wine sales data tab. It's got who sold the wine, when they sold it, what type of wine it was, how much it cost. And actually, I'll change this. This is a little high. I realize now that the one that I just sent you had kind of a big value there. I'll change that down to 200. I'll put this back in the chat window in just a second. There's one for payroll, which shows a set of people and how much they get paid per hour and how many hours they work. And then, of course, how much they get paid weekly. And then there's this other one for voters data. It's got it's got some a voter ID, a party affiliation, and then some dates that they've voted in. So it's regular old Excel data, right? We all know and love this type of data. Now, how do I distill it down in some visual and interesting sort of way? So I'm going to close this file. I'll actually save it and I'll put it back into your chat window. Thanks, Carly. I'll make you do it again now, just because that one, it won't make that much of a difference, but that one cell had a really, really large value in it from my class that I did yesterday. Okay, cool. So now that I'm here inside of Power BI, I'm going to connect into that data, meaning I'm going to hook Power BI into that file. Power BI doesn't store any data at all. Never has and never will, right? Your data is stored somewhere else, but you can hook into it by connecting to it through what we call a data source. So I'm going to choose Get Data here to start a brand new Power BI file to connect to that Excel file that we saw a second ago. Now, Excel's not your only option, and I want to make that clear. If you have a SQL database or an Azure database, or even if you need to connect to your Facebook data. All of that stuff is accessible here. And you may have imported stuff into Excel in the past or using Power Query or whatever you've used in the past. But I want you to notice just how long this list of stuff that you can import to, or I guess I should say from, is currently. It's super long, right? If you've got data stored in a place that anyone has heard of, it's going to be accessible here via some method. And even if it's something more generalized, like a JSON web service feed, or an OData feed, that there's a hook for just about anything you've ever heard of to connect your data into Power BI. That's really why Power BI has zoomed ahead of most of its competitors. So of course, in this case, I'll spare you the list of all of those, and I'll just use an Excel file. So I'll choose Excel, and it says, okay, what file would you like to connect with? And I'll choose the same file that I just put in the chat window. And again, you can play along with me. If you feel like doing this, please do browse to that file. And I'm going to start here with a simple one, this one called Voters Data. I'll just check this tab called Voters Data, and you see that this is going to look slightly familiar to you. We saw this data just a moment ago. And then I'll click on Load. I'll go back to Transform Data. We'll have to talk about that in just a second. But for now, we'll just talk about loading in this set of data. It'll take a second. It creates what we call a data model in the background. And those of you who've used pivot tables in the past or pivot charts in the past, you may have worked with this data model idea. And now here we are, we're in a blank Power BI window. And this is really where the fun stuff gets going. So we've connected to some data. Over here on the left-hand side, you'll see three little tabs here. I want you to look at these three little tabs to identify the main way of navigating here inside of Power BI. The first one is this visualization. This is showing me this blank. Obviously, it's a clean slate at this point. But I can also go down here to the next tab down, which will show me my data. And here you can see this is the data that I've just imported into Power BI. If you've used other tools like Power Pivot, some of these buttons right here might look familiar to you. And naming your table, this might also look familiar to you. So hopefully it's not that big of a transition. For those of you who have been using Excel for some time, and maybe even Power Query and Power Pivot, this is pretty much what we're used to seeing, right? The last one here is for relationships. It allows you to relate two different tables together in a relationship. So you can take two disparate data sources and combine them and pull them together. And this is something that I know a few of you on the call that I've met before that we've actually had long conversations about in the past. So I'm going to go back here to my visualization section. And we'll talk quickly about these three panels right over here: the filters, the visualizations, and the fields tabs. So on the right-hand side, I'll start over here with filters. And this is actually where I will end with you at the end of this 45-minute conversation. This is how we limit certain data from being displayed on certain pages. Of course, as filter implies, right? Visualizations, now this is where we pick what chart type. And again, I hate using the word chart because we're past charting, right? We're in these visualizations. But here's all the visualizations that you have. This is not, in Excel we have, currently there's 12. But here there is much more than 12 just here in this one little preview. If I click these three little dots, you can actually get more visualizations, more types of charts, if you want to call them that. And there's not just a few, everybody. There are tons. And while I'm talking, I'll bring this up just so that you can see a few of them. There are tons of custom visualizations. You can even make your own and put them up on this app source. I'm scrolling through these very, very quickly just to show you some of the options that are out there. Again, I'm here to light a fire to show you, holy crow, there is a lot of custom visualizations that people have already made out there that you can tap into. I'm going to stick with some of the basic ones For today, I'll show you one, if we have time, which we probably will, I'll show you one that's kind of fun with a little fish tank that's got some fish floating through it, just to exemplify how amazingly diverse your options with visualizations are. Right below the visualizations, you're going to see two tabs. And I know it's kind of hard to tell this. Look at my screen here for a second. There are actually two tabs here. There's one that lets you pick where the values go in the what we call shelves. There's one that lets you format the different values inside of the shelves. So these two tabs are down below here. Keep in mind, if you're on a previous version of Power BI, this is actually going to be on a separate panel here. Go update your Power BI. If it looks different than this, go update your Power BI. You'll see that this new layout down below here is where you can both drop fields into your visualization and also format those fields and change how they get displayed on the page. So here we are onto our last panel here, the fields panel. This fields panel shows you a list of columns that are in the file that we just linked to. You see that each one of these checkboxes is one of the columns from the file that I showed you a moment ago. Here inside of this fields box, I can drop these fields similar. If you've done pivot tables before, you're going to feel in good company here. Similar to pivot tables, there are what we call shelves, places to put these fields to summarize your data. Like, let's say that I wanted to make a bar chart. I can click here on this bar chart visualization. It's the very first one. If you're following along with me, I just clicked here on the very first one. Now, let's say that I wanted to find something out about this data that I have in that other spreadsheet. Let's say I want to know the average years of registration by party, let's say. Now, of course, I could do that really easily in Excel with a pivot table or a pivot chart or SUMIF or COUNTIF or AVERAGEIF. You can do that in Excel. But so far, and I want to draw your eye to this, so far I've been talking to you for about 10 minutes now. I've literally clicked 4 different times. I went on the Home tab, I clicked on Excel, or if you first start up, I chose Excel from that window. I chose that Excel file by browsing to it, and then I clicked here on this bar chart. Now, again, my argument to you today is try to do this visualization in any other way faster and tell me how. Like, let's say that I wanted to know the average years registered by party, let's say. Here in this fields section down below here, you see there's an axis, a legend, and a values shelf. We call these things shelves. You can put stuff into these shelves, but if you're not sure where to put stuff yet, don't worry. All you got to do is just check the box next to the thing that you want to visualize. That's a tongue twister. I can check this box next to party, and I can check the box next to years registered. Now, knowing nothing else about how Power BI works, I've just created a pretty interesting visualization that shows me here's Democrat, Republican, declined, and a couple other parties there. And this is actually, at this point, the sum of the years registered, which doesn't really make any sense in this case, but I can change that. Down here underneath values, you can see that it's dropped. Look at my lower part of my screen here. You can see that it's dropped years registered and the party affiliation automatically into these shelves. One it put into Axis and one it put into this values section. How did it know what to put into what? All I did was check these boxes, right? I didn't do anything extra. How did it know where to put this stuff? And it did that because it recognized this field as a numeric field. That's that little Greek letter sigma, that little E there. And it recognized this field, party, as a non-numeric field. So it thought I was probably trying to group by axis and sum values. Literally, all I did was check those boxes and I got a visualization for it. Now, of course, in this case, it's not that great a visualization because it's adding up these years registered. I'm going to click the drop down. I'm going to change this to the average. So just click this drop down right here. If you look at my screen again, this little arrow lets you change how are we aggregating this data. Do you want to add it all up? In my case, adding up the years that you've been registered, well, I mean, maybe that is kind of interesting, but probably not super interesting. If I click this drop down, I can change this to the average. What if I want to know the average years registered by party? If I choose that, now you can see that I can tell just at a glance that the average years registered for the Republican voters in this data set is 15.58 years. For the Democrats, it's 13.92. For the Green Party, it's 10.9. So now I can easily get a sense of how long each party has been, their voters have been registered. But what if I want to group by something else? All I have to do, watch this now. This is, I'm literally going to do this with 2 clicks. I'm going to uncheck party, and I'm going to check age group. I can now see, based on age group, how long each voter has been registered. And of course, as you would expect, 71 plus has been registered for the longest amount of time. And of course, 18 to 20 has only been registered for about an average of 2 years. What if I want to know the average based on ballot status, let's say? I can uncheck this box and check the box for ballot status. And now I can see that the perm, the ABT, and the poll are in this order. Now, whatever those, I'm not a polling expert or a voting expert, but I can now see what that graph looks like. But it gets much more complicated than this. Of course, this has been super, super simple. All I've done so far is just check the boxes next to the columns that I want to visualize. But it gets more complicated. You notice there's one more shelf here that I haven't utilized. It's called Legend. Hopefully you can see my little chat box just popped up there, but hopefully you can see that. Legend I haven't utilized. What if I want to visualize 2 of these metrics at the same time? Again, all I have to do is just check a box like maybe age group, and it will plop, since it knows that this is another text-based field, it will plop that value into this Legend shelf. And now I can see, I'll zoom this up because I know it's a little bit small here on my screen. Now I can see, based on age group, based on ballot status, what the average age of each person in that particular section of voters is. And I did this literally by checking 3 boxes. Again, find a faster way of doing this and tell me how. Okay, cool. So now let's talk about the different types of visualization. Some of you are probably thinking, Josh, I've taken your Power Query and also Power Pivot class, and maybe even just Pivot Tables class, and I could totally do this without using Power BI. So why am I here? I'm about to show you. Check out how many different types of visualizations there are. Of course, there are stacked bar charts, stacked column charts, or side-by-side bar charts, or side-by-side column charts. There's your stacked area chart. You've all seen these. The new funnel chart we've seen as well. But check out some of these other visualizations. We have these things like dials, where we can actually put a little, like a little speedometer. I can also display this. If you've done this in pivot tables before, if you've been in my pivot table class before, of course, I can do that in a pivot table visualization as well. So it's not just charting, right? You can visualize your data with numbers as well. There are hierarchy charts. There's this tree map chart, which is also super cool. And of course, like I showed a second ago, you can get more visualizations. There are so many out there. It will blow your mind if you go pick through all of those different visualizations. Cool, so this data set's very, very simple. I'm gonna go connect to one that requires a little more work next. I see a couple of chats here in the chat window. Let's see if there's any that Carly or team wants to call out. I'll wait for 1 second to see.
Yeah. Josh, just one, this actually speaks more to Tableau, but in Tableau, do you know if you can import like a data design like you did in Power BI?
Absolutely, that's a great question. Tableau has a very similar import structure like you've seen so far. But what Tableau can't do is what I'm about to show you, and it's a great segue into the next portion of this class, which is transforming data. Tableau allows you to connect to data all around, but it doesn't have the power that the import features that we have here in Power BI have. And And I'm really glad that you asked that question, Carly, because it's a perfect segue into my next section. So I'm going to go to File. I'm going to choose New. I'm going to make a new visualization. We'll leave this one the way that it is. I'm going to connect to a set of data that's not as easy as this one was. Of course, here during my class, I make sure to make it easy on myself. But it's not always that easy. And I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to go back. I made a new file here. I'm going to go back to Get Data. I'm going to choose that same file. So it's the same one that we were working on a second ago. Give me 2 seconds to do that. I'm going to pick this other worksheet, this one called wine sales data. And I want you to look at my screen share. Even if you are following along, look at my screen share for a second. I want you to see what I'm talking about here. You'll notice that there's some weird stuff going on here. The columns are just called column 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's an empty row here, which I don't want. These are supposed to be the column headings here, and they're not, right? They're actually the third row down. Something's wrong with this file, and this is where I'll finish answering that question. Tableau can't do what I'm about to show you to massage this data in the right way before you bring it into your visualizations. Now, of course, and I want to make this clear, I could go to the Excel file and fix these problems there, and there's no problem with that. However, if I do that, next time when I get the next report, I have to go redo that work again. Every week or every day or every whatever it happens to be, whatever frequency your data gets reported back to you, you would have to go repeat that process. If you keep watching, you will never have to do that again. Yes, so that's a great, yeah, thank you, Carly.
Sorry, Josh. No, we had another question come through around like if you have dynamic data in Excel, so data that's changing, will that pull through into your visualization? Which it sounds like you're going to address that now.
Absolutely. Yes, and I love that. I didn't see who asked that question, but I love that your head is going in that direction, because absolutely, if I can make this file transform into what I need it to be, next time when this file updates, it will make that same transformation, and I'll have brand new data without having to do anything to the Excel file. And again, that's one of those wins that you get over Tableau. So I'll show you this just quickly again, because it bears repeating now that that question came through. Look at this file before I import it into Power BI. It looks like this. Now, this is not very usable here in Power BI. It's not very helpful because it's got this heading. It's got a blank row here. It's got these headings here, which are helpful, but they're not in the right spot to be useful. And then it's got all my data down below. Next month, this list is going to grow by some number. And if I go through here in Excel and I manipulate it and I get it the way that it should be with none of that junk at the top, I get rid of the blank rows. Next month, I have to redo that. If you transform this data in Power BI, you'll never have to do that again. And hopefully I've piqued your interest there. I'm going to close this file and I'll show you how to do it. So I'm going to hit Transform Data way down here at the bottom. Underneath Transform Data. This is not like your favorite car that morphs into a superhero. It lets you transform the shape of the data that you are trying to import. And in this case, I know that this data is not in a good place, right? It's not formatted correctly. I can actually tell Excel kind of like a macro. If you've done macros before, kind of like a macro, I can tell it step by step, how do I clean this data up? How do I make it usable for what I need to do? And over here on the right-hand side, you see that there's already some steps that have been applied. And actually, some of these steps are no good. Some of these are bogus. They're not correct. And in this case, you see that it's promoted some headers. This little guy right here. This is bad. It's promoted this. I'm going to change my color scheme here so you can see them both. It's promoted this title Aussie Wine into a header in the columns, which doesn't make any sense. It also has updated the data types in each column, which you can see here. Again, it's just doing column 1, column 2, column 3. Something's messed up here. It's not going well. So let's get rid of some of these steps. I'm going to get rid of this promoted header step. I know that's no good, so I'll delete that. I'm going to get rid of this change type step because, again, I know that's no good. And now, of course, I want the source step, which tells me where the file is. And then, of course, the navigation step, which will load it here into this grid view so I can actually see it. So far, we're doing okay. But there's a bad row up here at the top. This row called Aussie Wine has nothing to do with anything, right? So I want to tell Excel, or Power BI in this case, remove this first row from the file every single time. And I can do that by going to this dropdown where it says remove rows, and I'll say remove top row, and I'll pick just the first one. Now, of course, there's a faster way to do this, and I'll talk more about it in a second. I'll say remove top rows, and I want to only remove the first row. So again, I clicked right here to remove top rows, and I'm going to tell it to remove just the first, whoops, sorry, my control key wasn't all the way down. I'm going to say to remove just that first row. Cool, so now that row's gone. If you look up here at the top, now row 1 is this row. But again, I didn't remove enough rows. I should have removed both of those top 2 rows. But I also, and the reason I did it this way is because I also always like people to remove any blank rows from their tables. So I'll click the drop down next to remove rows, and I'll choose remove blank rows. Now you see it removed that, the word null just essentially means blank. It removed that row that had the words null all the way through. Now I want to show you why I did this in this order and why it's important to do so. You might be thinking, Josh, you could have just done remove the top 2 rows instead of just the top 1 row. That's totally true. And I'll show you why that is also an acceptable way of doing this. If I did remove blank rows first, like if I did remove blank rows first, you see if I just closed out both of those 2 steps there. If I chose to remove the blank rows first, now I do only have to remove the first row. But what if I did it in the other direction? I'll choose to close out of that. If I chose to remove 2 rows here, this would work if I did this in this order. But what if I did it in the other order, like I just did? I'll remove that I just added. If I chose to remove the blank rows, and then I chose to remove 2 rows, a second ago, this worked just fine. It actually looked perfect. But if I remove the blank rows, and then I choose to remove 2 rows, well, now I've removed too many rows. The point is, the order of these steps matters. Not just kind of critically, right? You really want to make sure that you do this stuff in the right order. If you remove 2 rows, then you don't need to worry about removing the blank rows. I always like to tell you all, like I said, to remove blank rows first, because I don't ever want blank rows. They're never going to be useful to me. Now I can look at how many rows I need to remove from the top. In this case, it's just the 1. So I'll choose remove top 1 rows, and I'll click OK. Now these steps are building up here in this applied steps, and I can go back in time, kind of like an undo, and I can see what it looked like at that point in time. I can then close out of these. If any of them are wrong or doing something that I didn't expect, I can either X them out, or you can always reorder them by clicking and dragging them and putting them in some different order. Be careful, the order matters. Cool. The only last thing that I have to do here is I have to tell Power BI that this first row here is actually the column headings in my list. I'll double check that, make sure, yes, these are all column headings inside of this table. I'll now tell Power BI to use this row as the column headings for the table. And you can do this by promoting that first row up to column headings. And I'll do that by clicking this button here that says use first row as headers. Awesome. So I've taken this file. I know how I'm going to get this file from my boss or from my IT people or from whoever. Now I've taken the file and I've told Power BI or Excel how to tweak it in just the right ways so that next time when that file changes, Excel will do these same steps in exactly the same order, exactly the same way, and give me the data in a perfectly clean way. Now I can start building visualizations. Of course, there's a lot more to learn here, everybody. Come back to my Module 5 class, in my Excel Module 5 class, where I'll talk about how to change data types, how to show and hide different columns. You can also do splits on columns. So if you have a first name and a last name and you want to split the two apart, you can do that. You can also merge queries together. You can append queries, so you can take two data sources and stack them on top of each other. There's, again, to say that I've scratched the surface is not doing justice with what I've just done with you. Come back to my Module 5 class where we talk about managing lists and importing data, and of course Power Query here. But I'm going to call this done, and I'm going to close and apply this.
Josh, quick question. What is change type? Linda had a question on what is change.
That's a great question. Sometimes when you import your data, it is going to assume certain things about that data. And it does this based on whether or not there's text and numbers inside of a column. If when you import something that has only numbers in it, like let's say an employee ID, for instance, actually you might have saw that in the last example. I'll pull this up. Not an employee, it was voter ID. You see here, it thinks that voter ID has a sigma next to it because it saw that voter ID was numbers, but you're never going to add up voter IDs, right? Or employee IDs. You're never going to average an employee ID. So treating things that are numbers as numbers sometimes doesn't actually make sense. So you can change, it'll pick a data type that it thinks is correct, but sometimes it's going to guess wrong, and it does this. Like you might have another, I'll go the reverse direction. You might have a column that has the month of the year, 1 through 12. It might assume that you're trying to make 1 through 12 add up to something or average to something. And that just doesn't make any sense. You might have to change that data type, and you can do that actually in the Power Query window that I was just in. You can click that drop down and say, no, this isn't a number. It's actually just a text field. Or you can say, hey, I know this looks like a number. It's actually a date. Convert it to a date field. So that's what that date change type, or that change type field is. Excel's going to guess for you, but it's not always going to guess correctly. You can pick and choose what data type each column that's coming in is. And I love that you asked that question at that time, because again, we have another set here. The margin, the quantity, and the sales are all here, in this case, numeric values. You see that little E next to them. If that E showed up in the wrong spot or didn't show up when I needed it to, that's where you could tweak that data source to have it change from one data type to another. And you'll see that, actually, I'll head over here to my data tab here. You'll see that when you're importing the data right next to the data type. Of course, here I'm past that, but you can change that in the Power Query window. You can tell it what data type you want to be, and that way, when you get it here into your visualization, it knows what it is that you're talking about. Also, another one that I didn't talk about yet, but I kind of mentioned briefly a second ago that I'll now go into. It recognizes dates. Do you see this little calendar here next to the word month? It knows that this date field has months and dates in it. I'll show you how to drop that onto visualizations here in a second, and show how that stuff plots over time. Okay, so now we've talked about the basics. Power BI is just a way to bring data together to make visualizations. That data is not always going to be perfect. You're going to have to transform it and get it where you need it to be. The next time that file gets updated, the same transformations will happen, and you'll get the clean data that you see over here on the right-hand side. Now we actually get to start having fun and playing with creating some really cool visualizations. If you think that creating visualizations could be fun, you are in fellow company. So let's try it. Let's make a visualization. Maybe I want to find out, let's say, which region sold the most wine. In this case, it's a kind of a silly example here. This is a set of sales reps who sell wine. I want to know which region in the country sold the most wine. This is actually Australian states. So I'm going to check the box again. knowing nothing else about how to use Power BI, all I'm going to do is check the box next to state, and I'm going to check the box next to sales. Now, by default, you see that it's created a map because it's recognized that some of these things are geological. And it's going to do this. All you have to do is check the boxes next to what you want to show, and it will guess the best visualization to show you for that type of data. How cool is that? In this case, it's guessed a map, and actually this is Australian data, so you see that there's some dots here in Australia. This is actually at latitude, longitude 0, 0, because it doesn't recognize what that is. But I can change where this is. I can change, how I'm visualizing this data by just picking a different visualization here from the list. I can change this visualization super easily. If you've tried to do this with Power Query or Power Pivot in the past, it's not this easy. I can simply click on a different visualization and see this data represented in any of these different ways. Maybe I decide that the best way to visualize this is with a Doughnut chart. Just like that, again, a few clicks, I can now see that this region, whatever it is, in this case it's South Australia, has the most sales from the rest of my regions. For some reason, Western Australia is not doing very well. They're not selling very much, right? I want to find out why that is. So I'm gonna do a deeper dive here into this data. Is it because my sales reps are no good? Is it because the type of wine doesn't sell very well in that region? What could this be? I can now add in some new metric. Like maybe I want to find out, is it white wine or red wine that's causing the problem? Maybe I'll check this box next to color here in the field section. You see it put color here into the details box, into this details shelf down here. Now I can actually see the detail of why certain things are not selling as much. If I zoom in here, I want to make it a little bit bigger for you. I can see that, okay, white wine and red wine, they're actually pretty evenly split across all of these. So you see that white wine and red wine, there's no one winning super handedly on either side. So let's resize this. I'm going to keep this visualization. We're going to make a dashboard here. Let's find out, maybe it's because of the salespeople that my sales are not going very well. I'm going to make another new visualization. To do that, I'll simply deselect this visualization. And I'll click out here in this white area. Just clicking out here in this white space. And now I'll make another visualization. Maybe this takes, I want to see an actual number amount. So I'll tell Excel or Power BI in this case that I'm trying to talk about a table. I want a grid of data. Let's look at each sales rep's individual sales. I'll do that by checking sales rep. So I have this visualization selected here. You can see on my screen here. I've clicked on this visualization. I'll now click on rep. You see that it's put all of the sales reps into a table. And I can now, let's say that I want to find out what their sales were. I can check this box next to sales. And there's all of their sales. Yes, that's helpful. It's mildly helpful. It might make sense to sort this list by sales. Maybe I'll click on the sales column up here at the top to sort it. And I can now see, okay, yeah, Peter Douglas is doing pretty dang good, right? They've got, whatever, $6,900 worth of sales. But what region is Peter in? If I click on Peter, it'll highlight that region over here on the right-hand side. And the reverse is true as well. Watch this. I'll click on Peter again to unclick Peter. What if I'm trying to diagnose? So why are these sales not doing very well? I'm trying to diagnose that problem. If I click here on this region, watch, it shows me who's in that region here in this table. I can see white wine versus red wine as well. So now I'm starting to be able to ask that question. Why are these sales not doing so well? Well, I can tell here now John and Mike they're not doing very well. But it's not that John and Mike aren't doing very well. I can see that John and Mike are actually pretty low on the sales. It's just that the Western region doesn't have very many sales of wine. I guess that people in Western Australia just don't drink very much wine, right? No fault of John and Mike's. they just don't have very much wine. So let's think about this in a different way. What if I want to know, okay, well, maybe they don't have very much volume, but maybe they sell really expensive wines. I want to know the margin of sales versus the volume of sales. So how would I visualize how much sales they have in a region versus the margin of sales in that region? Well, if you're not sure, this is why I love Power BI. I can just click away. So I've clicked out here, right? I've clicked somewhere else. I can now make a comparison between the dollar amount of sales that I've made versus how much money has that made me. Maybe that has some bearing on what we're talking about here. So let's try it out. So let's say that I want to know, based on the color of wine, I'll check color. I want to know the sales versus the margin. Now, again, in this case, it's decided to make a table for me, but this is not very visual, right? What if I wanted to show this in some other visual way? Well, now I can start experimenting. This is why Power BI is so, pardon the pun, powerful. I can now say, okay, well, let's show those in a stacked column or bar. Well, that stacked column, maybe that's not exactly what I wanted. Let's try showing them side by side in a column or a bar chart. Here's the stacked column chart. Oh, now I can see that, yes, the margin is 12,000 here and 27,000 here, but for white wine, it's whatever, 9,000 here and 18,000 there. If you want to colorize this chart by something, maybe you want to colorize it based on the state where these wine sales took place. I can then drag state here into legend, or of course you can just check state and it should put it into legend. If it'll let me, it won't let me put legend there. Let me try stacked here. There we go. It still doesn't want me to put that there, which is strange. At any rate, now here I am. I can now compare here, and whatever this is, a stacked bar graph. I can now compare. Okay, yes, I see that the sales of this wine in this color outsold based on margin versus sales. If I want to see only these red sales, check this out. I can click here, and it is now showing me. You might not have noticed that. Look closely right here. Watch these numbers change. If I then filter by only red wine, you'll see that it shows all of these numbers change, and you see that it shows this highlight here. Essentially, what this is doing is filtering the entire dashboard by whatever I've clicked on here in this visualization. And again, let's say I wanted to, maybe I'm sitting down with Geg Clayfield here, and I want to say, you know what, Geg, let's talk about your red and white wine sales and what their margins are, and how can we, make this more efficient for you next year. I can click on, I think it's supposed to be Greg, but it says Geg. It's been that way for quite some time. I can see, what, it looks like you're selling only in this region. You might try branching out. Also, I can see that, you're selling some red and white wine, and they both have pretty good margins, but I can see that your red wine margin is quite a bit higher than your than your white wine margin. Why don't you try to sell more red wine, because we make more money on that wine. And again, maybe I'll add one more viz just to cap us off here, and then I'll talk about filters for just one brief second, and then I'll send it back to you, Carly. Let's say that I want to add one more that describes how each not region, I already did region, how each type of wine, let's say, relates to my major sales. Again, I'll click out here in the white area. I'll just check the box for type. You see, it creates a new visualization for me. I know that I want this to be a pie chart, so I'll choose pie. And I know that I want to base this on the quantity of bottles sold per type of wine. Now I can see if I want to talk to Greg or Geg about his or their Riesling sales, I can click on Riesling right here, and I can instantly tell Greg how much they've sold in that type of wine, and I can ask them why they didn't sell more. I can also see, based on that type of wine, in each region, how much wine was sold and what my profit margin on those types of wine are. For my money, it doesn't get much better than that when you're talking about visualizing data. I'll finish with one last thing, and that is using filters to narrow down your data. You can put any one of these fields into a filters box, similar to if you've used this inside of a regular pivot table in the past. I can filter just like I've been filtering here, but on all of the visualizations without actually having to make a visualization. Like let's say that I wanted to filter by brand. I can click and drag brand, and I can drop it onto filters for this page. Now here in this filters dropdown, if you've used if you've used Excel before, you've seen a list like this. Where now I can say, you know what, I'm gonna give out some fancy stuff to my best performing brands. Let's figure out how Campbell's is doing. I can check Campbell's. I can say, oh, actually, they only sell one type of wine. So yeah, probably not them. Let's try this Blue Pyrenees. Well, they only sell one type of wine, but they sell in all 4 regions, and they have a pretty high profit margin. Let's send them, a box of chocolates or whatever you would do for your favorite customers. So I hope this has not just scratched the surface. I hope it's opened the floodgates for all of the stuff that Power BI can do. Again, come back to my Power BI class, and Carly will share with you my link in a minute to get onto our what we call offsite, which is how I hope some of you joined this meeting. It's a great way for you to connect with me and ask questions about what you've learned today. And of course, I hope that you come back and take a Power BI class with me. And before I toss it back to Carly, I'll finish with, it's good to see familiar names and familiar faces. Thanks for all of you who shouted out to me in the chat window. And like I always finish, take care of yourself, take care of your families, and take care of each other. Thanks for joining today. I hope you learned some cool stuff. Carly, I will toss it back to you. I'll see you all in a future class.
Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you. Everyone, if you enjoyed today's class, you can kind of give Josh some kudos, give us a thumbs up, a reaction. Awesome, Ahmad. Love the use of the reactions in chat. Amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you, Josh. I learned a lot. I'm new to using data, so in this way, and so this is really helpful for me. I had Chris and a couple other people were asking me about classes we have coming up, and so I just want to briefly share a little bit around what we have coming up. If you do want to dive deeper, Josh is one of our full-time instructors here at Learnit, and we have a 2-day full-length Power BI class coming up from March 4th to March 5th. And that is a little bit more intro-based. And then we also have an Analyzing Data with Power BI that is kind of geared more towards Power BI professionals. If you're more of a data analyst, that's a 3-day class, a little bit more advanced. So if you're interested in either of these courses, we will have a discount for those of you who attended, and the discount will be available in Offsite, which is our online community. And I'm going to share a video on really briefly here. But there will be a discount code, and also feel free to email me if you're interested in either of those classes, or you're interested in bringing Power BI training directly to your team. We also do custom private training. So if you want to bring Josh into your organization directly, we would love to work with you in that way as well. And then we also have more community sessions coming up. So in the interest of us all kind of skilling up in data, we have a session more geared towards data analysis with Excel coming up next week. And then we'll start to transition into learning how to actually tell a story with your data. So I think Josh did a really great job of this today, using these visualizations to then get across the message of the story that you want to your boss, to a client, to a friend. And then we'll go more into presentation skills and kind of the soft skills side of using your data to then help you feel really confident when you're giving a presentation to somebody. So that's what's on the docket. And I'd also like to just close with a video on Offsite. We'll share the link to join Offsite in just a moment. I'm just going to pull up our video for Offsite so you guys can all hear my sound. But we really hope you'll join us here. Let's see, Josh, can you see my screen or no? Not yet.
Not yet. I saw it a second ago, but it looks like, yep, there you go. You're good now.
Okay, there it is. Amazing. So we'll drop the link in there as well to join. Hello, and welcome to Offsite by Learnit. I'm Carly, Community Lead. Offsite is a new online community dedicated to fostering the principles, skills, and connections needed to thrive in the new normal. It's a place you can go to reconnect with your professional goals and aspirations and find answers by collaborating with a group of intelligent people from all over the world. And now, more than ever, with the crisis affecting everyone in some way, we are all looking for safe, inclusive spaces to connect with each other, to learn new things about the topics that matter most, and to grow together personally and professionally. So whether you are working on your own personal growth, working with technology, working with others, or leading people in teams, Offsite can help. Offsite is organized by topic. So if you're looking for career advice, insights on business, free workshops, or a good book on leadership, it's all on Offsite. And in the spirit of community, we are looking to you to help us shape this platform. We encourage you to engage with your peers and instructors, share your thoughts, and ask questions. The more you put into it, the more you get out of it. We are so excited to be launching this online community, and we can't wait to see you here. Awesome. And just really briefly, the most immediate benefit of Offsite is recording to these sessions. So you'll get the recording. If you have questions, we also downloaded the questions. So we'll keep these on hand. And if you have questions, just to follow up, Josh is in Offsite. Our promise is that our instructors will get back to questions within 48 hours. So if you reach out to us in Offsite, we will address your questions directly. And you also can RSVP for future events. So those are the most immediate benefits with joining the platform. And it's free. Ricky, I see you're asking, do I need to sign in? You just need to use your first name and your last name and your email, and it's completely free to join, and you can access the events from there. So Josh, let's see, did we put we'll want to put the referral link in there for you all to join. I just want to make sure it's in the chat.
Sure, I can. Oh yeah.
Oh, there we go. I think we got it.
Cool.
Amazing.
I saw that question as well. And I'll say, you don't have to sign up to explore, so you can check out our community and see what you think. But it's worth it. Thank you, Carly, for the great outro. I got one question that I wanted to answer just while I have a second, and I see that there's still a few people here. So I'll share my screen real quick. Somebody asked me, how do you do that fun fish thing that I mentioned earlier? So I'll show you. There's a awesome. Thank you. There's a funny one called Aquarium. I think you have to spell out the full word aquarium. But if you do a search for the word aquarium inside of the ... here, so go to this little ... and this is just kind of a fun thing to finish with. There's one called Aquarium, which it's a little fish visualization. And I know it's totally silly, but you can do something like this where I'll check sales and I'll check brand. And you'll see a bunch of little fish swimming around. The bigger the fish, the more that brand has sold. So you can see the small fish in a big pond, and of course this big fish. So somebody asked me about that. It's just kind of funny, but it really does tell you just how extensive, and there are so many plugins out there. I spend hours and hours just looking for fun ones to show in class. This is one of the ones that I found, but check them out. There's tons of cool ones out there. Anyways, I'll end with that. Carly, I'll toss it back to you if you have anything else to say, but thank you all for joining, and we'll see you next class.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I guess one other point too is I know there were quite a few questions that we didn't get to today. So please either email me, or if you join Offsite, you can message those questions either directly in the home screen and ask them to the group, and we will get back to you. And so I just want to emphasize that we really will, we want to address your questions. And also when you take a full length